In one of your television ads, headlines appear about Republic, Bucyrus, Talgo, and Direct Supplies adding or creating jobs. And their narrative makes it clear that you are claiming credit for these. In what way are you responsible for bringing or adding these jobs? And does that mean you are responsible for job losses as well?
When I came in as mayor, one of the things that I did initially was um, I reached out to suburban and rural leaders and business leaders and said, look, we cannot continue to fight these battles that have been fought for decades. And it really went to my experience in Congress. When I was in Congress, I remember sitting with some of my colleagues and people from places like Denver or Seattle or Portland, and they always talked about regional approaches. And I felt, and we've talked about it at this table, I felt that for far too long in southeastern Wisconsin, it was city pitted against suburb, and that it was not a winning solution. And so I was one of the people that was in the room that created the Milwaukee 7, the M7. All of these are, and I remain one of the co-chairs of the Milwaukee 7. I am convinced that Milwaukee 7 has played a vital role in the retention of those jobs and the attraction of those jobs. I don't think anybody would dispute that working through Milwaukee 7, and whenever I've described it as it's working through M7 through Milwaukee 7, we were able to work with those companies. And again, Republic's a perfect example of that. We worked through the M7, worked through the Milwaukee 7, and that was a real world competition. That was not a magazine ranking best places to work. That was not a think tank or a university doing a study of best places to work. That was a real world competition with a real executive and real jobs and competing against real cities. And I'll always remember the article that I saw in an Indianapolis newspaper that said, well, this is clearly a competition between Indianapolis and Denver, and just dismissed Wisconsin altogether. But relying on the tax credits that are tied to job creation, on site selection, on getting the right employee mix, we ran the table. And so we not only retained the 700 to 800 jobs that were here, we also attracted the 700 jobs that are still coming here from Denver and Indianapolis. And so I very much feel confident in saying that the M7 and the Milwaukee 7 has helped us in retaining, creating, and attracting jobs. Having said that, to your point about loss of jobs, there's no question that we are still in an economic downturn. And 100 out of the 101 largest metropolitan areas in this country, between the period roughly from November of 2008 to November of 2009, 100 of those metropolitan areas lost jobs. 100 out of 101. The only one that didn't was McAllen, Texas. So can I say that this metropolitan area is immune from those job losses? Obviously I can't. Do I think it would be worse if it were not for M7? The answer is yes. I think we would have lost even more jobs than we did if it were not for the M7. So what I have said, and I'll say it here, I think it's important to be proactive and aggressive in selling this, and that's what I've done. I've been proactive and aggressive in trying to create jobs here, and that's what I offer as governor. I think we need a governor who's going to be the number one salesperson, the number one cheerleader, the number one ambassador for the state, and that means proactive and aggressive. And this is where I think there's a fundamental difference between me and some of the other candidates for this job. I don't think you sell a newspaper. I don't think you sell a house. I don't think you sell a car by saying how lousy it is. You talk about what the strengths are. When I walked in this business, I see the pictures of winning the Pulitzer Prize. I mean, you're trying to sell newspapers based on quality. And that's the type of salesman I am. Is that, look, whether it's this community, whether it's this region, whether it's this state, I'm going to do everything I can from day one to create, retain, and attract jobs. And that means being positive about the state and not spending my time saying how terrible it is. Because I don't think that's how you do it. If you have a leadership that talks about how bad things are, at some point people start saying, well, what's the point?
Do you believe Scott Walker and Mark Newman do that?
Oh, I think they love any economic bad news, because I think it underscores the message they're trying to deliver.
The other message we hear out there is that the business climate in Milwaukee and perhaps the region is not the best it can be. How do you respond to that?
I would need to have more specifics when people are talking about that, because the business climate also incurs healthcare costs. And that's one of the concerns I hear from employers is healthcare costs. It includes utility costs. It includes taxes. It includes transportation. So I think that when people ask me that question, the question I ask is, well, let's talk about it. What are we talking about specifically here? How can we deal with this? And that's the way I approach problems. Is I'm a problem solver. So again, Republic Airlines, I could have said, don't bother going after Republic Airlines because all those newspaper articles out there, or all those studies are saying this is a bad business climate. We'll never get there. We'll never get there. And if I relied on the naysayers, I would never have tried. I would never have tried to start M7 if I believed the naysayers. And I don't believe the naysayers.
Okay.